Well, it's been a little while since I've done any updates on my potted trees. So it's October, like we're probably heading into the last week of October right now. So I'm gonna just kind of provide you guys an update on my potted trees. And in terms of my potted trees, you're not gonna see everything, but you're gonna see a mixture of everything. I got grafted plants that are meant for rootstocks. I got grafted Florida plants. I got grafted like non-turpentine plants. But I'll show you guys a little bit of each, and each time is probably a bit different. So right now I'm going to show you guys my carries. So these, I got quite a few carry plants. I got, gosh, I think there's about 10 of them. So I picked up about 10 plants last year just because they were a good price that I got on Black Friday, and they was cheaper than even rootstock plants. So that's why I picked up about 10 of them. They are Florida rootstocks. They're definitely not zero rootstocks just because of the graft. They were cleft grafted. Um, they were cleft grafted on it, and for some reason I think it might be, my wild guess might be from Pine Island. I'm not really too sure, but they seem to do a lot better than some of the zero ones. And it seems to have less issue and a little bit more vigorous. So I know with the turpentine, it's not really ideal, but some turpentines do a little bit better than others. And I have found that some of the champa plants, they seem to do a bit more vigorously. And I'm going to show you guys some of what I'm talking about when I show you guys that. So this is some nubbins from the carry plants. I probably got about like maybe 6 to 8 like fruits, maybe one or two full-size fruit, and like a bunch of nubbins from these carry. They set on the second bloom. And what I'm experimenting with these potted plants is for next year, I do want to see if I could try to get fruit set on them in terms of on the first bloom, and see if that helps with getting potted plants to kind of get ripe fruits earlier than my in-ground plants. We'll see what happens. So these are kind of small nubbins. They're really, they're not that big this size, but I'm surprised like they don't crack anything. They don't crack anything for nubbins, and they seem to be pretty reliant. Most people I know with carries seems to get some sort of fruits on them yearly. So I have about 10 plants. I let some held on to fruits, and I let some pick the flowers off of some of them. And it definitely shows that when you do leave the fruits on, you don't get any vegetative growth. If you guys want that confirmation, that's definitely a fact. So these are 2 nubbins. I think this one might be ripe. Yeah, so I'll pick this one, put it on this counter, and let this little nubbin ripen in the next couple of days. And there's a couple more, some larger ones right there. And then this is, for example, a carry that I didn't let hold through. You see all the branching on it and the height that it gave off versus kind of like this one that didn't grow at all. So definitely does make a difference between a plant holding fruit and a plant that doesn't. See, some of these carry with the nice vegetation. That's not holding fruits, right? And then you can see this row of carries where I did let it hold fruit, and they're a lot more smaller. I'm gonna try to go around and get a better view of some of the other carry fruits that came in. So this one's the largest size fruit, definitely a full size, almost a full size fruit I think. It's pretty large. So that's one more, and there's another kind of like, this one's still very green, so this one still has a lot of time to go. So as you can see, this row of carries right here, barely any kind of vegetative growth because I did let it hold fruit, versus kind of like the ones in the back right there. This one is my Glen Glen plant on turpentine. Definitely a Florida rootstock. I just don't know what kind of strain of turpentine they're using, but it's definitely not a Zell just due to the graft I've noticed. But I get some of these turpentine or Florida rootstocks where they are so vigorous in terms of like the suckers that come out of it. So this is actually the suckers. So here's the grafted part right here, right? And then this is all the suckers. And you're probably asking me why I'm letting all these suckers grow out. So look, even the sucker from the rootstock is taller than this glen right now. They were so vigorous. It's very interesting. What I'm gonna do is I'll probably just kind of see how they grow. I mean, I have lots of friends that have a glen, so I'm not. It's not really something I would like to have a glen in my yard, but it's not something I'm really going to be propagating too much of because glen is a very seems to be a very unproductive variety here. Very highly powdery mildew prone and doesn't really produce well. Most people I've seen trees for, they aren't very productive. So, it's something I'm showing you guys what I'm doing, but it's not something I would recommend for you guys to do if you guys just have a few plants here. I'm just experimenting. I really want to see how big these suckers from the rootstock does get. So I do get some of these where it's like these Florida grafts, and it's definitely not Zell because the graft is always a cleft graft on these, but they always seem to do a bit better. So they kind of seem to be much more vigorous, kind of handle the winter better. And look at this sucker that I produced. It's like, what the heck is this? It's huge in just one season. And there's like 2 of those here. So definitely not something I recommend for you guys to do, but I'm just experimenting. I might end up taking this and just grafting it to a larger tree. Just kind of, serve as a purpose of having some rootstock varieties on my trees. Just maybe in the future somebody needs it or something like that, but nothing I will be experimenting too much with. But I just wanted to show you guys this. So yeah, I got this plant from Champa Nursery, and they're Florida trees. Very limited selection, just a few varieties here and there, but they definitely aren't from Zell, and they definitely seem to grow much better. And a lot of people have had that same experience with the trees. So not all turpentine rootstock seems to be equal. Again, I still do recommend more of the Laverne litter and more of Atafa rootstocks, but it kind of just shows you a bit of the variation you get even from turpentine rootstocks. I'm sure there's lots of strains of them out there, so so that's this wild kind of crazy experiment right here. So you see the glen right here, and these are all turpentine rootstocks. And this one is a Fallon, so it's a Thai variety, and this one I would have to say has been my most surprising grower, just because due to how it started off. So I had lots of just weepy kind of thin growing branches. I actually had to thin out the branches, so I thin out maybe 6 to 8 dozen branches off of this because it kept on trying to flush new branches everywhere. And I see this is the size of it. It kept on removing them, and then all suddenly the last flush it started getting very vertical. So very surprising on this one. Look I'm surprised how well it's doing. Initially it was just flopping everywhere. So I do believe in minimizing branches, and when you minimize branches you get lots of more vertical growth. And this was a good example of it because it was probably around I would say about maybe this height or so, and lots of kind of thin branching and flopping branching. I thin it out and it's really nice now. So let's see if this actually flowers, and if this flowers this summer. Well, it should flower this summer, but if it this winter, I mean. But if it holds fruits, I would let it hold fruit. I think it's just decent enough size to let it hold fruit. I need to probably, I'm getting some weird kind of bark kind of damage or something here, so I'm gonna probably put some more pruning sealer on it, just because we are getting into winter. So yeah, definitely fallen. Very surprising. So I did something right for this Florida rootstock. Here's my oldest potted tree. Have this in a pot since fall winter 2021. There's a little bit of sunburn I got. This is a mislabeled Teal Savoy. I'm pretty sure this is a Golden Queen, Jin Huang. That's what it is. Here's the trunk. Right, so this one is definitely one I am pretty confident that is probably close to that is probably a Zill graft, just because how clean the graft was. Even when I had it when I was young, it had a very nice graft, kind of very low, so. This one's buttercream. Okay. I've been trying to thin out a lot of branching on this. It's a little bit leafy. Early in the year, I did have one fruit on it. Accidentally knocked it off. I was kind of mad at myself for that, you know. So let's see how this goes this year. If it trunk is pretty decent size for it to fruit. So I'm gonna let it flower and let it hold fruit if it does. And here's some more trees, but this one's from a different source. I got most of these are from Tropical Acres on what is supposed to be, it's from Florida, but what is supposed to be non-turpentine rootstocks. So I have got some decent growth on most of them. You know, I'm hoping at least the second year if I'll get a lot more growth, but you know, they're doing decent. Not super vigorous, but not slow, and seems to be okay. Some better than others. I'm going to show you one that has done really well, one that hasn't done really well. Let's see, for example, this one is a Zill 4026, and I think this is the one that is part of the latest kind of hype or urgency for people trying to get plants of this one. It's supposed to be a slow growing coconut flavored one, so I think that's why lots of people has been very kind of excited to try to get their hands on this. But for me, it's been kind of like, has not done well. Been lots of yellowing on the leaves, and it finally flushed the growth, you know. So we'll see what happens next year on this. Hopefully it's healthy enough to survive this winter, but it's been slow growing. But it's probably something very kind of getting a lot of attention in Florida, and I think any new kind of coconut flavored mango is getting quite will get quite a bit of attention these days, and especially one that's slow growing for Florida is probably something they want. For us, I'm not really sure if this would be ideal for us, just because it might be it kind of seems to be might be too slow growing. Now this is one again, also from TAF, but from Florida, but non-turpentine rootstock. This variety is also a Zill variety. This one's 3415. Like I think it's supposed to be like an Indo-Chinese flavor, but this one has been very vigorous. So here's the tree. When I got it. When I got it, it was probably about that size. Yeah, it was that size, and then it flushed, and then it's now finishing off this third flush. But very long internodes and growth on this, so we'll see. I have not heard any reports on the flavor of 3415, besides a few kind of comments here and there, but we'll see how this goes. You know, it might be a good Vegas one if it keeps up this growth rate. And I'm going to show you some odd kind of experimental kind of ones. Or this is a chancer on an Asian rootstock. The rootstock is called Podang. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's an Indonesian rootstock. This is imported from Indonesia, and I'm kind of babysitting it for my buddy Jeremy right now, trying to get this to grow. We'll see how it does, but it's getting into winter. I haven't gotten a flush, so I'm gonna just keep on trying to flush vegetation from the rootstock. So I'm gonna just let kind of 2 of them kind of flush out to kind of, you know, help support the plant through winter. And then once we get into spring or so, I'll probably be cutting this off and maybe even using it as scions to see how kind of just keep a source of a few varieties of like what would be common rootstocks. So it's just an experiment, and I might use it as grafted, but I'm keeping these 2 limbs right now just to kind of help support the plant through winter, because there's been no vegetation flush. So I'm hoping this will help support it from getting too stressed out, and then I'll trim it off once we get into spring. This is my Banganapali. Looking pretty good. So got a couple flushes this year from it. Actually 3 flushes, so you know, looking pretty good. It had lots of small limbs, had a small like flushing, and that I kept on taking and trying to graft it onto other trees. I don't think I've been successful yet. So you know, the science went the best, went the strongest. So the tree, at least it's doing pretty well. So this is Banganapali on a non-turpentine rootstock. This is an air-layered Laverne Manila. Okay. It's doing pretty good. I might put this in the ground as an experiment to see how it does in the ground. This is an air layer, and you know, I have no issues with air layers, so I'm gonna put this in the ground and see how it does. So this is air layered Laverne Manila branch right here. In terms of seedlings, I got lots of seedlings. I've been just slowly trying to get them potted up. You know, it just takes time and money with soil and pots and stuff like that. But this is a few of the ones that they're about to be outgrown for pots. So this is Bombay. So these are 1 gallons. 1 gallons, and definitely need some new pots on this. And here's a bunch of excuse me. Here's a bunch of honey kiss. Again, in a bunch of 1 gallons. Honey kiss has been growing pretty decently, like slow, but like a good consistent pace. You know, this one I accidentally moved it around and got sun and got burned, but you know, this one's didn't get burned. This was actually flushing at the same time, and you can see what happens when the leaves get damaged. It just kind of slows down the inner node growth totally, right? So look how long this gone, and look how short this has remained. And just to kind of compare between these potted ones and this one I put in the ground. So this one I put in the ground is a honey kiss. Honey kiss seems to have a distinguished shape to the leaves, and it's a very kind of nice looking veins and stuff on it. So this is one that's in the ground. So the video is kind of getting a bit long, so I'm going to finish it off by just showing you guys, I'm showing this a good one, my variegated Maha Chinook. Very nice one. Again, this series is kind of like, you know, I'm not really sure what to do with this series. I got too much stuff in pots, but every time I would like to show you guys some different stuff. This one's a variegated Maha Chinook seedling in a pot. Alright, thanks everyone.